Today we'll be talking about the new refines you can grab in Update 8.8 for Fire Emblem Heroes. In part 1 we'll talk about Caellach, Dieck, Gatrie, and Seteth. We'll cover what everyone can do, plus discuss some build ideas. In part 2 we'll discuss Dual Female Byleth, Mythogooler, and Legendary Claude. Uller and Claude also got remixes alongside their refines. Part 2 is going to be its own separate video. In this part, first up is Caellach. We just got the last Grado General with Glenn, and now the others after Volter are finally starting to get refines. Caellach is a heroic grow axe infantry unit with decent attack and the usual middling speed. His main niche is that with Max Dragon Flowers, his 37 res is good enough to tie for third highest among all axe infantry, only losing to 2 min-max units released this year. That's how low the bar is for high res axe units. Now, Caellach's new Gatrie axe doesn't really lean into this niche, but you can play around it if you want. Every turn, this weapon inflicts -7 attack and defense and discord onto the closest foe and any other foes within 2 spaces of that. At start of combat, if above 25% HP, Caellach gets +4 to all stats and 30% damage reduction for 1 hit. His next counterattack will then gain true damage equal to 30% of the damage he was originally going to take. Like Brash Assault 4, this empowered counter only uses 30% of the foe's original damage before reductions. You can't stack it further. Gatrie axe is a fairly basic percent DR weapon with stronger counters, however it also gives Caellach support debuffing utility. His debuffs will always hit someone and it spreads out as well. Further refined, if any bonuses on Caellach or any penalties on the foe, he gains another +4 stats and inflicts a penalty on the foe's attack, speed, and defense equal to the highest debuff on each of those stats between the target and nearby foes. Caellach gets a free follow-up and he deals true damage equal to 10% of his attack stat. So, with attack and defense debuffs and the incoming sabotage effect, Gatrie axe is kinda like half of Arcane Threma. Instead of no follow-up and tempo, Caellach gets 30% DR with empowered counterattacks, a little extra true damage, and then a free follow-up. He also gets a base +8 to all stats. This is sort of a stat-focused refine, and Caellach has that more balanced defense and res spread. He's not going to be a super tank, but there's some potential for mass stat stacking. If you want to utilize his awkward-based speed, you will want speed debuffs for sabotage to double in combat. For general playstyle, Caellach seems like a higher risk, big damage brawler. For either phase, you could focus on hitting back hard, although survivability might be an issue. If anything, Caellach just wants to fight debuff foes, so his sabotage effect doubles debuffs in combat. For a standard enemy phase build, it's tough to beat Lagu's friend. Even though that will cut down Caellach's 30% DR in half, it's a riskier option, but it would give Caellach cooldown and then DR piercing specials. Caellach could run this with Times Pulse to guarantee Bonfire Iceberg gets charged, or even pledges cooldown to counter guard. However, there is a new option with the next Tempest Sacred Seals, and that's Speed and Demons Tempo. Tempo's no guard guarantees the 3 cooldown specials will get charged when Caellach takes a hit. You could actually get Tempo via Odd Defense Wave 4 as well. No matter how you do it, if Caellach survives, he empowers his counterattack with extra true damage and has a DR piercing special. Because this is a very counterattack focused playstyle, you may want Hardy Bearing and or Nelsie Disrupt Echo to ensure Caellach gets his turn. No Desperation, no sweep effects. You could also opt for the other skills like Breath of Life 4, Finish, or Boost A skills. I assume most want Distant Counter, although you don't have to run DC. For player phase focus, ideally Warping with Ode 4 or Assault Troops Charge would be nice to extend Caellach's attack range. He wants to attack foes hit by his debuffs, and you can try to just challenge them. Excel can offer some flat DR, Tempo or No Follow 4 gives half DR piercing, and Heavy Blade would be nice to actually charge something like No Quarter. Guard and Tempo effects would be good to prevent big burst specials, and this build could also use speed skills to pressure units who aren't naturally fast. For some other skills, Caellach could run Special Spiral for recharging, or Gambit, Bulwark, or Guard 4 if you want to stack regular % damage reduction. He has good base HP, so you could run skills like M3 Pulse, and then stack further with Tier 4 boost skills, Squad A Seals. If possible, try to pair Caellach with a Panic Applier. Panic's negative buffs are also doubled by the sabotage effect, so it can get pretty nasty if the foe doesn't stop debuffs. Overall, Caellach got an okay refine. It's basically a Brash Assault 4 weapon for either phase, with some stat stacking potential. You could also go for a support route if you really want. We started off with our usual slowish axe infantry, so next we have a slightly faster axe infantry. Dieck invests a bit more into speed and defense rather than HP and res like Caellach. He is a bit tougher to merge though as a retired 5-star. Dieck's Tiger Roar axe got 2 upgrades. It's a 60 might slaying axe, and if Dieck initiates or is within 2 spaces of an ally, then he gets +5 to all stats, a free follow-up, and flat damage reduction equal to 20% of his defense stat. Dieck doesn't have the craziest base defense or anything, but he is rewarded for flat DR if you do build into it now. Previously, his free follow-up only worked on full HP foes. That has been simplified. Further refined, if the foe initiates or has more than 75% HP, Dieck gets bonus stats equal to 4 plus the number of foes within 3 rows, 3 columns, centered on himself times 2. He inflicts guard on foe and gets -1 instant cooldown before his first attack. For the stat boost, if there are 5 enemies in Dieck's 3 row, 3 column range, then he can get up to +10 to all stats. This isn't my favorite condition because as you defeat enemies, Dieck just gets less and less stats. He could get +19 to all stats with this refine, but that's with 5 enemies in range. At minimum, he's going to get +11 to all stats. On top of this, you also got flat damage reduction, guard and a free follow-up, Dieck has accelerated specials, and then instant cooldown before attacking. This part doesn't have any conditions, so you could use defensive specials or even something like Gale Force. Dieck can proc any 2 cooldown special on his first hit, and feel free to stack this further with other cooldown perks like Times Pulse, Rally Spectrum, or Emblem Art. With his multiple cooldown perks, Dieck can also try to run Lagoo's Friend. He can't charge Emblem X Ring with this refine, but he can use it to fight against Scowl or guard effects. Dieck has close defense 4 naturally, and now gets flat DR for running higher defense. With Lagoo's Friend, he'll have flat DR equal to 40% defense, which is pretty good. In addition, Dieck also has a good chance to proc Ignis for a huge DR piercing counterattack. If you're in something like Defense Wave 4 or the new Temple Sacred Seal, Dieck could guarantee Ignis is charged after getting hit. He could then use his Refine's instant cooldown to counter Scowl effects. If you instead ran a cooldown skill like Pledge, Times Pulse, or Steady Breath, Dieck could actually proc Aether. Now, to flip things around, you could use the Refine's instant cooldown with Special Spiral. If Dieck can charge Ignis somehow, then after combat, it's going to go down to 1 cooldown. If he initiates afterwards, the Refine grants that -1 instant cooldown, so instant DR piercing, Ignis procs. If you rather go for speed builds, Dieck could try the new Gust special. Like Erica with Times Pulse, Dieck could charge Gust immediately. Add something like No Follow-Up or Tempo 4 for half DR Pierce. You could then get Gust's unpierceable % DR to stack with his flat DR. We have a new attack and speed Clash Sacred Seal coming if you want some nice stats. For other speed-based specials, Dieck can run Times Pulse plus Vital Astro and counter Scowl with the Refine. If you do Godlike Reflexes with Buffer, then Dieck could recharge on the counterattack if you can get around guard. You can also do GLR plus Lagoo's Friend instead. For other skills, any % DR B skills can work with Tiger Roar Axe's flat DR. Obviously, the downside being if you're okay with it potentially getting pierced. You could run Pavis or Aegis with Lagoo's Friend if you don't think Dieck is fast enough for GLR. Maybe you just want to stack more defense. Higher defense does mean better Breath of Life 4 healing potential as well. Now with Times Pulse, Dieck can just straight up proc no Cordy immediately if Scowl's not in play. That is pretty funny. Overall, Dieck's Refine is not that complex, but Sling and Instant could provide a couple interesting playstyles. He has some good stat potential, but I wouldn't say he's the fastest axe fighter if you did want to run speed skills. He also doesn't have the highest natural defense, although it's not terrible either. Luckily, infantry have a lot of build options depending on which stats you want to focus on. Lots of mix and match skills for things like tempo, no follow-up, DR piercing, and or general cooldown. Our third refine is for Gatrie, who is a decently min-maxed slow lance armor unit. Gatrie gets a new weapon called the Mercenary Lance. 16 might if the foe initiates or has more than 75% HP, inflict -5 attack and defense on the foe, neutralize the stat debuffs on Gatrie, reduce damage for all hits by 20% defense, and Gatrie gets +1 cooldown per action in combat. Fairly straightforward. An armor that ignores debuffs is great, and Gatrie uses his high base defense for flat DR. He gets breath type cooldown, and that's not all the cooldown perks Gatrie's gonna get. Further refine, if Gatrie has 125% HP, he inflicts more attack and defense debuffs. This time it's equal to 5 plus 15% of his defense stat. After combat, Gatrie heals 10 HP, and on the enemy phase, before the foe attacks, Gatrie gets -2 instant cooldown. So, altogether, Gatrie inflicts a base -10 attack and defense. You take 15% of his defense stat, and that becomes even more debuffs. 44 defense would be a bonus -6. On top of that, you got flat DR, debuff neutralization, and instant cooldown plus breath type cooldown. After every fight, Gatrie heals 10 HP. While his cooldown perks are pretty impressive, Gatrie doesn't have Sling, and this does lead to some awkwardness when it comes to special choices. This is one of those weapons where Emblem Mart's free Sling can literally change the entire playstyle. Before we get into cooldown scenarios, Gatrie will most likely be running the typical enemy phase savior builds. His instant cooldown is enemy phase only, though if you want to run Emblem Celica with Bold Fighter, then be my guest. Gatrie has Crafty Fighter in his kit, which is Quick Repose plus Guard. With his new weapon, that's like having Special Fighter, although we can get Guard from the A slot or even Guard Echo. Instead of Crafty Fighter, it's tough to beat Weaving Fighter's 80% or 40% DR when combined with Mercenary Lance's flat damage reduction. With Weaving, Gatrie isn't looking to double, he'll get -2 cooldown before getting hit, and while taking the hit, his Breath type cooldown will grant another 2 cooldown. This means Gatrie can retaliate with Ignis if the foe doesn't have guard. That's pretty good. Now you could also settle for half the damage in Armored Blaze. The 3 cooldown is still going to be charged into guard effects. Sadly though, Gatrie's not going to benefit from the unpierceable damage reduction on the first hit. If you want this, you need Emblem Mard's Ring for slaying. At this point, you basically have a makeshift Lagu's Friend setup. You could even consider using Special Spiral 4 for a Deer-piercing Armored Blaze to make up for the loss of Ignis damage. Now for just pure tanking, Hardy Fire is another good option. Gatrie could recharge any 2 cooldown defensive specials for later fights. In the same fight, he potentially also recharges his Scuccian thanks to his cooldown reduction. With Emblem Mard, you could bump this up to Pavis. You could run Emblem Ike's Ring, but Gatrie's going to be stuck with the Scuccian or Sacred Cow specials. Now, to fill out his other skills, Gatrie does have Fortress Defensive Res 3, so you could upgrade to the new Stronghold if you wanted. However, Gatrie already neutralizes debuffs, so I don't think it's needed. If you run Close Defense 4, now Gatrie ignores enemy field buffs for even more stat consistency. You can do Distant Counter and Far Save if you want. You can stack HP with Boost A skills and Squad A seals. Hardy Bearing would counter Desperation and allow Gatrie to retaliate. That could be his offensive special or just recharging his defensive special for a second hit. While most builds will use Savior, if you don't, then Odd Defense Wave 4 and Breath of Life 4 are both fun defense focused skills. In conclusion, Gatrie's new weapon provides a lot of cooldown, which can lead into a variety of special options. Emblem Mard can further expand on this playstyle. In terms of tanking, nothing super fancy besides a ton of attack and defense debuffs, both scaling off defense, which Gatrie's stacking anyway. Debuff neutralization is simple, but also an excellent effect. Sadly, a lot of foes just leech off nearby enemies anyway, and with Savior, that's kind of impossible to avoid. Still, not a bad refine. Try to get percent DR in some way. Last up for part 1 is Seteth. He's a demote Lance Flyer with a okay spread of attack, defense, and res, and high HP. Seteth is not going to be a monster in combat, but his refine is going extra hard on these support aspects. Spear of Assal is a 16-point weapon that grants +3 speed. In 3 houses, it was effective against cavalry, so they added that back in here. Seteth grants +4 to all stats to allies within 3 spaces, and he will neutralize the foe's field buffs for those allies in their combat. If Seteth is within 3 spaces, he gets those same effects himself. Spear of Assal was basically a joint drive attack and speed buffing weapon. Its buffing range has gone from 2 to 3 spaces, and now gives +4 defense and res as well. In addition, Seteth used to have low attack and speed. That's now full buff neutralization, and he's going to give that ability to his allies as well. Interesting so far. Further refined, for all allies within 3 spaces, Seteth gives them another +4 stats, +7 true damage on hits, and 7 flat damage reduction for first attacks with an S during combat. If Seteth is within 3 spaces of an ally, then just like his base weapon, he gets the extra same effects, and as bonus, Seteth heals 7 HP after combat. Overall, Spear of Assal is a super joint drive weapon, +8 to all stats, full buff neutralization, +7 true damage on hit, and 7 flat damage reduction for first attacks for everyone within 3 spaces. Seteth will then get cavalry effectiveness, after combat healing, and a little more speed. This is a stat-focused weapon, and it helps the entire team counter enemy field boss as well. A flat DR support option is also pretty solid. By itself, not so crazy, but add that to other flat DR skills many units have been stacking, plus any percent DR sources, and it's a good ability. Flame has her 30% DR aura, and now Seteth as flat DR. I would say Seteth is now a very interesting free-to-play support unit. 3 space range is easy to work with, and as a flyer, Seteth has a lot of good skills to add further team utility. He is countered by few defects, but he's a non-5-star unit, which means higher chances to get more copies. What happens if you stacked multiple Seteths on a team? In general, Seteth now offers immense drive support for +8 stats and the loyal effect to counter field boss. You can easily add to this with things like joint drive and spur skills, but the crux skills have a longer range to match Spear of Assal. -4 debuffs and follow-up support is quite nice. There are of course a ton of other options. Rain Snap can offer extra movement, Guidance 4 skills grant warping. The new tier 4 wave skills are just 2 space field buffing tools, and Seteth can make use of their in-combat effects too. You then got the hot Breath of Life 4. Soaring Echo is a solid attune skill choice, and you could dip into other support B skills as well. It's not crazy, but instead of just a rally assist, you could use link skills. The tier 4 gives Kanto 1 as well, which could be fun with guidance. If you just wanted a team buffer, lots of budget options are available. For some survivability, Wyvern Rift is an interesting option. You might need to stack more speed and defense, but if it activates, you basically double up on true damage and flat DR. Omnibreaker with the increased speed difference can help prevent doubles, and you could run healing or defensive specials just to stay alive. While they can be pierced, percent DR skills like Guard Bearing or Gambit might offer more survivability. You could also stack flat DR in the A slot with something like Assal, although if you're going with Wyvern Rift, you may as well steal Earthwind boost from Risotto. For a combative setup, Seteth could opt for Flow Guard for no follow-up and Scowl. Flared Sparrow is nice for Flame Tiles, but we are lacking in Conto to retreat. Instead of near Trace, there's a new Conto options for Flyers on the upcoming Hoshido Festival banner. Attack and Speed Mastery provides stats, and if you get into combat, then the user gets Conto 2 afterwards. Having more options is always nice. For the most part, Seteth's Refine is mainly about his stronger buffing capabilities. His combat's okay, but nothing super special. He's an easy to get unit a lot of players may just have lying around, so honestly, maybe worth a look at if you got extra Divine Dew. You don't have to go super premium. Stuff like basic rallies, links, or drive buffs are nice add-ons to the Refine's excellent array of effects. All in all, very impressive Refine, especially for a demo unit. You can basically add Seteth to support any team comp, and that makes him valuable even without fighting. That's going to be it for part 1 of the Update 8.8 new refines. Let me know your thoughts and share any build ideas with everyone in the comments. Personally, I kind of want a 5-star and refine one Seteth myself just to have around. I am also thinking of at least merging up Caellach. Not really a favorite of mine or anything, but building up the Grado Generals does seem like a fun project now that they're all released. Next up in part 2, we'll talk about dual female Byleth, Euler, and Legendary Claude. Links will be in the end card and description when they are ready. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.